Hello everybody, so this video is intended to be a visual explanation of everything that I hope you need to know for the cutting tournament that I'm running at Iron Gate, with the objective of making sure that you can be fully prepared for what's going to happen there, and so hopefully nothing there the day of is a surprise. So the first basic thing is sort of the format of each individual round. There's going to be a line on the ground about 10 feet back from the stand. You're going to start behind that line, all right, and then you're going to get a go signal from the director. You're going to approach, do your cuts, okay, and then withdraw back behind the line. And when you get behind the line, again, is when we stop time. You are being timed for how long it takes for you to do everything. Obviously, we don't want you hurrying so much that there's a safety issue, and so running, jumping, things like this are going to be strictly forbidden and seriously frowned upon. Additionally, you must remain facing the target at all times. So you cannot throw your cuts and then turn to move faster. You have to remain facing your opponent the entire time. So that's one of the basic things. The scoring rubric is explained online, written out, and hopefully written is going to make more sense than anything I can say out loud. Round one, this is what the target setup is going to be. And so what's going to happen is that your first cut is going to be on this small target up top, okay? And the rubber band will be placed about 2 inches down from the top. In your first cut, you must split this piece of tatami in half, all right? And stop the sword before you cut the rubber band that's below here, okay? If you cut that rubber band, your cut will not count. Then you will need to do a pair of descending cuts, right, left, I don't care which order. Then you're going to do a pair of rising cuts, right, left, again, I don't care what order. And then a pair of horizontal cuts, right, left, again, I don't care what order. Since you are being timed, the smoother you can do these things, the less of a pause and reset you can do in between these actions, the better. However, successful cuts are being weighted more heavily in general than the time is. And you can see exactly what I mean by that by looking at the scoring rubric, which is on the Iron Gate website. For a cut to be successful, it needs to be one of several things. It needs to be the correct angle. We're not going to be really picky about that. We're going to be eyeballing that. No one's going to have a protractor. It needs to completely sever the mat. If the mat is severed incompletely, then it just doesn't count. One of the things that means is that there's a lot of material sticking up, sort of a frayed end. That means you didn't quite get all the way through the mat. And so that cut simply doesn't count. We're counting the number of successful cuts and the number of cuts attempted, and the fraction of successful cuts to attempted cuts affects your score. If you cut what's usually referred to as a mountain, where one cut intersects the previous cut, you didn't cut through the full thickness of the mat, and so that cut doesn't count. Other things, if you do something like strike the stand, you are done for that round, and in all likelihood done for the tournament, because the odds of you having a good enough score at that point to continue are low. If you strike the floor, you will almost certainly be immediately disqualified depending on the circumstances of you doing so. The possibility exists that you will only be penalized. If you strike the peg badly enough that we have to replace it, then that cut will not count. If you just nick the peg, we'll live with it. So the first round is your basic qualification stage. We want to see you execute basic cuts in a fairly simple, easy to do pattern. The next stage of the tournament is the cutting from different guards stage. And what's going to happen here is that you're going to be required to execute several cuts, and you're going to be varying what guard you start from. I have endeavored to make the definitions of the guards that you need to start from as generic as possible so that anybody's system can work with this. And if you watch this video and you come back to me and you're like, hey, this guard from this system isn't covered, please email me, post about it on the forum, ask about it on Facebook. I will answer that question, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that it is addressed adequately. It's that nobody's sitting there feeling like I have written rules that make your system unworkable. So the first cut's going to be a descending cut from a high guard. So that's anything where the cross guard is at or above the level of your shoulder, and the point is up, back, generally out of the way. So here, 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 Ideally, this should encompass just about every version of Vom Tag that exists. Guards like Overhuts, as well as Posta di Donna from the Italian systems, should fit just fine with this. And if you have a specific question, let me know ahead of time. I can be emailed, I can be asked on the forum, I will answer questions. The next cut is going to be another descending cut, this one from the opposite side. So if you threw your first cut from the right, your next cut's going to be from the left. And this cut is going to come from a high hanging guard. So that's going to be something where, again, the cross guard is at or above the level of your shoulder, and the sword point is generally forward. So this incorporates ox, the hanging guard as it's defined in sources like Meyer, and hopefully incorporates things like fenestra. At least my understanding of what people tell me fenestra is, should incorporate something along these lines. The important thing to understand about the moment from your cutting out of this guard is a guard like this, and this is going to be true with the other elements as well, is that you can't chamber through another guard, but you can do a moulinet. And the way I'm going to define this, what the judges are going to be looking for, is that your hand only moves forward from the time you start the cut. So what that means is if I'm here on guard, all right, I can't do this and then cut. What it means I have to do is I have to drive my hand forward from this action. So I can even dip the point behind me and get this full moulinet action, but my lead hand only moves forward from the time I initiate the action. This is the defining characteristic of using these guards correctly as far as this tournament is concerned. And that is because I want you to be able to perform specific subsets of actions that appear commonly across many systems and represent common things in the way an actual fight operates. The next pair of cuts are going to be rising cuts. Similarly to what we have seen before, you're going to be alternating left and right. The first of those is going to be from a lower hanger. So this is going to be something along the lines of plow. We're going to want the cross guard of the sword below the level of your midline here, where your belt would be. All right, and the point generally in the forward arc. So if you do your plow here, or your Italian guard, whose name I can't remember the name of off the top of my head here, something like that. If you do like Meyer's Iron Gate here, that's fine too. Although frankly, that's making it more difficult for yourself than necessary in my opinion. But hey, if you can make it work, awesome. So generally from one of these guards, you're going to be throwing a rising cut. And again, what we're looking for is the defining characteristic is that your hand moves continuously forward from this action, that you don't circle it around, you don't come through some other guard position first. You can moulinet, all right, but the lead hand moves forward only from the point at which you're starting the cut. The next cut is going to be done from some variation of elbow or tail guard. So again, hand low, cross guard low, and the point back or offline down here. So something along the lines of like, start it here, this is good, here's fine. If you cut through to a change guard and then you throw the next cut, great, those are all going to be acceptable positions. And yours, I know, this guard like that shows up in every longsword system there is, so hopefully this works well for people. The fifth cut is going to be another descending cut, and it's going to, and I don't care whether or not it's right or left for this last cut, and it doesn't matter what your last cut was in terms of whether it's right or left, because I want this one to be easy from that standpoint, because the position you have to throw this cut from is the position that is likely to be the most difficult position that you cut from, and that is from an extended position here. Okay, so hands in between the level of your waist and your shoulder, and arm fully extended is where the cut's going to come from. So there are a couple of ways to do this, all of which are acceptable. You could, for instance, start with your hand up here near the level of your shoulder and simply cut through. You could, from here, simply do a wrist moulinet with the hand not moving backwards and then back forward. All right. Both of those are acceptable approaches to do this. If you have worked to the point where you can link the 5 cuts of this pattern together, then one possibility is that you throw the last rising cut and then immediately turn around for that wrist cut there. That's another way of meeting the definitions of the pattern for this tournament, and which is something that I believe is an achievable objective. Some people should be able to pull that off. And that is the next stage, cutting from different guards. So another one of the stages in this section of the tournament is going to be cutting multiple targets. You're going to have the same pattern that you're using on both targets. The difference between those patterns that will exist is whether or not you start on the right or the left. So what's going to happen is you're going to throw a pair of cuts, right, and then a pair of cuts, okay? And you're going to have to shift back and forth between these two targets, throwing a succession of cuts. You're going to throw 2 cuts into one target, 2 cuts into the next target, alternate back and forth. You're going to have to do these small shifts around as occur during a fight. And the faster you make those shifts, then the better your time is and the better your score is. The target on your right, your first cut is from the right. The target on your left, the first cut is from your left. This is what's going to be correct. It makes things easy for everyone, okay? I don't care whether or not you start with the left target or the right target though. You know, if you want to come here first, then that's fine. When you have finished cutting one target, but you're not done with the other, as sometimes happens, you just finish up the pattern on the one target that's remaining and then withdraw back behind the line, and that's when we stop time. So the next stage is the arbitrary accuracy stage, in which there will be lines painted onto the tatami, and your objective is for your cut to fall within those lines. So this is a test piece I'm working on right now. We're going to figure out exactly what's going to work well for this. So you'll see there is some variation between the different lines here as to what exactly it's going to look like. This should give you a general idea of what we're looking for. So a successful cut is going to be one that remains entirely within the red area, all right? And that's going to be worth 2 cuts as far as the scoring scheme goes. If your cut's angle is not quite right and it goes through some of the white on one side or the other, then that'll count as 1 cut. So if you get the start position, you hit the correct point on the mat, but your angle's a little bit off, then that's fine. You can still get a reasonable score with that. If your cut intersects the white area twice or misses the red area entirely, that will be an unsuccessful cut, even if you completely sever the tatami mat. It is your obligation as the competitor to say to the person who's spiking the mat, nope, adjust that a little bit before you start, okay? At the point when the director says to you, are you ready? You should either have determined that yes, the way it's set up in front of you is fine, or say, no, I'd like the mat turned a little bit, okay? Because once you say yes to the ready command to the director, you're done talking, you're done interacting, unless there is a safety issue. That's the point at which I will say go and start the stopwatch, and you will go, all right? So this pattern is fairly simple in terms of the cuts you're going to be throwing. It's going to be a pair of descending cuts left and right, a pair of rising cuts left and right, and then a horizontal cut through the lines that are painted on the map, which is not what I have painted here. This is a test piece because we got 2 whole weeks for me to finish this up. All right. After that cut, the other item of arbitrary accuracy within this stage of the tournament is cutting a single small piece on the stand here, freestanding. So this is not attached, it's not spiked, it's not going to be, okay? And it's only 5 inches tall, okay? And you need to completely sever it, which means you can't just nick it top or bottom, okay? The stand we used that day will have an extra bit of tatami here, so that way if you just clip the bottom of it, you're not going to smack into a 4x4, which, you know, none of us wants to have happen to the swords in the middle of the tournament. And that's the basic elements of what's going to go into the arbitrary accuracy phase. The final round will have in it a set of cuts that are referred to as special cuts. This is a broad category and includes a variety of different options for you. One of the options that's available is any short edge cut, rising, descending, left, right. As long as it's short, back, false edge, whichever terminology you use, then that is good, okay? One of the other options that exists for you is a crooked cut, This is a cut where your hands are crossed as you deliver the cuts, right? And you are cutting opposite your body's motion. So if you are pivoting or stepping to your right, you're cutting down from the left, as opposed to a typical cut where I would cut this way. That's a crooked cut. And slinging cuts are also a option as well under the special cuts. So if you can do this and cut with it, great. That's one of your options. The way the pattern is going to set up is that you're going to go up to the judges before you start. You're going to say, special cut number 1 that I'm doing today is such and such, and you'll show us what you mean so that we're all on the same page. And then you're going to say, special cut number 2 that I'm doing today is this. You're going to show us what you mean so that we're all on the same page. And then you're going to go through the pattern. The pattern is special cut 1, special cut 2. Go to the next target, special cut 1, special cut 2. And there's going to be a third target as well, and you're going to be moving between these 3 targets. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The third target has a different pattern from the first 2. So being able to maintain the level of awareness and calm within the tournament to be able to deal with the fact that these 2 targets have one pattern and this other target has a different pattern is one of the things that you need to be able to do. This other target will be visually distinct because it will have a layer of linen on it. So it is technically more demanding to cut through the linen than it is to cut through regular tatami. And the pattern for that particular mat will be a simpler pattern. Just as before, when you're done with a particular mat, you've cut all the cuts you feel you can get out of it, you get to ignore that mat and then just move on to dealing with the remaining mats. Once you're done with all 3 mats, you've done as many cuts as you feel you're going to be able to achieve on those 3 mats, then you step back behind the line, and that's when we stop the time.